Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet, a trustless, open source wallet that gives you the keys to your crypto. Invoice, donate, and trade your Monero with peace of mind, piece of cake. And by StealthyX, an instant exchange where privacy is a top concern. Go to stealthyx.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register and with no limits, making StealthyX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you, and supporting us is easier than ever by typing in monerotalk.crypto in your monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip.
All right, we are live. Aaron, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Just sharing this out with a few people, but it's going well.
Sweet. I know we caught up a little bit yesterday, but we actually there's some things we didn't get to talk about. Obviously, we'll rehash some of the things we did talk about. We'd like to talk them out here in the open, particularly your latest thoughts on stablecoins. The need for unity in the privacy space, I think is an important topic. Obviously, we're talking about PorcFest as well. The fact that there'll be some high-level attendees there. Ross, potentially Roger Ver, still potentially, right? That's a potential. And I want to talk to you about your fasting thing. Yeah, I mean we don't have to spend too much time on that, but. I don't think we've gotten to really talk about it out in the open. At least I haven't gotten to speak with you about it. I thought that was pretty amazing what you did there. So yeah, I would like to cover all those things. I don't know, is anything that you would like to cover that I didn't mention there?
No, I mean those are the big things, and this stablecoin thing is really bad. I mean I've written about it, I've been talking about it, but just the more I dig into it, I think. The challenge with this is it's probably 100 times worse than it was a year ago, and people think that it's a non-issue because Trump said, signed an executive order saying there's no CBDC. So, I mean, I don't think we're going to stop the legislation, but I think it's actually more important that we really focus on getting immediate adoption on privacy coins and privacy stable coins. Like this has to be a focus, or otherwise people are going to be stuck.
Do you think this kind of like backdoor CBDC through the stablecoin was something that's been in the works for quite some time in terms of brewing behind closed doors? Obviously, the stablecoin people, we're working towards this, but I mean, were there political figures that kind of had this up the sleeve for quite some time?
There are, and it was something that I dug into this quite a bit, and it didn't realize the extent of it until recently. So, for instance, there was a guy that worked in Trump's Treasury Department. His name is Brian Brooks. So he was the acting comptroller in Trump's first Treasury Department. He left there, became the chief legal officer at Coinbase, where he actually worked with Circle to develop basically USDC. So that was going on kind of behind the scenes the whole time. Then you have on the Tether front, the latest investor in Tether, who invested $600 million in Tether, and the company that manages all of the alleged treasuries that back Tether is none other than Howard Lutnick, our U.S. Commerce Secretary. So I actually think this is much more orchestrated than we think. I also think, though, that Trump I don't think there's any grandmaster vibe here with Trump architecting this. I actually think the PayPal mafia and others have basically just infiltrated the Trump administration. And people complained that the problem with Trump in the first term was he surrounded himself with DC swamp creatures and he listened to their advice. The problem is this time, he surrounded himself with Silicon Valley and the PayPal mafia. And that's actually worse and more dangerous. And we're seeing it now with Palantir as well. Like, if you look at what's happened, Klaus Schwab probably retired and resigned because he couldn't do in 10 years what Trump's managed to accomplish in terms of pushing a technocratic agenda in 4 months. it's, whatever, 6 months, however long it is, we are into the year now at this point.
The technocratic experts are basically running the White House right now.
Think about it. We have Real ID. So
Yeah.
Real ID is digital in a number of states already. We have this backdoor CBDC, which is really problematic, and I'm sure we're going to get into it a little bit more. And then, Palantir is basically the infrastructure for a social credit system. And if you look at what Palantir has already done in terms of working with the CIA, working with intelligence communities, working with local law enforcement, essentially to work on pre-crime. They're using AI and algorithms to try to predict crime in advance. I mean, this is pretty much a nightmare scenario. Like we're all of a sudden we're going to wake up and we're living in Minority Report by the end of the year. So that's kind of what's going on. And people are actually now starting to wake up, but people have actually been cheering this on. Oh, great. We're going to stop illegal immigration. So, the Real ID is great. All this.
Yeah. I mean, we've been sounding the alarm. You've been sounding the alarm from before Trump was elected, right? Everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall with where things were headed, with Palantir being kind of in bed with Trump. There were other clues as well, right? But what really dampened it was the fact that Trump pledged to free Ross on day one. And that was kind of like the bargaining trip that he used with those that are most alert to what was going on, right? So even you, I'm sure, would say if you can turn back time, you're still voting for Trump. I mean, knowing that he would free Ross on day one. I mean, how do you say no to that, right? So,
yeah, I mean, that was the trade-off. I actually did an interesting interview with Dr. Irene and the Libertarian Party, and I said I endorse Trump, but the way that I look at it is this is a hostage negotiation. And then I ranted for about an hour to an hour and a half and said that I don't agree with any of Trump's other policies, and he's surrounded by technocrats. And people got mad at me for that because they're like, well, that's actually, that might hurt. That might hurt Roger or whatever because I'm saying all these things. But I'm like, look, I didn't endorse Trump the first time. I actually didn't vote, but that's a separate thing. That's a separate situation altogether. But he was horrible the first time, and this was a hostage negotiation. And I'm glad Ross is out. I mean, I think it probably, all things being equal, the only problem is if people actually equate Ross getting out with Trump having good policies. That's actually the only part of this that's problematic, is if there are people that are still holding on to hope or still think that somehow he's a white knight. It's very clear that Trump viewed the Ross thing as a one-off negotiation. He's not even applying it equally, right? He's not even saying, well, yeah, hey, this guy was involved in something and was the subject of lawfare, and the Fed stole his crypto and everything else, and so we should probably treat everyone equally. We still have all these privacy coins people and Roger and all the people that are really facing criminal charges are still stuck in the process, and so there was no blanket pardon, which there was with the J6ers, which is unfortunate, but I'm still hopeful that something positive happens.
Are you seeing positive movement in that area, or is it just at a standstill? With Roger and some of these others. I mean, are we seeing positive signs, or they did the Ross thing and now it's they feel like they pandered enough to that group and now they're moving on?
I don't know what's going on with any of the details in Roger's case, but I do think it's a positive development that he hasn't been extradited, right? Because he lost his final Supreme Court appeal or whatever months and months ago. And so there was this period of time where people are expecting any day now. I remember he went on to Alex Jones and he was kind of like, hey, I may get, picked up during this broadcast. So something clearly happened. And so it does seem like there's some negotiation going on, but I have no idea what it is. So I do think that there is some reason to be optimistic, but at the same time, I mean, it's kind of the DOJ is a separate animal from, say, for instance, the SEC. The SEC has been great. The SEC has been dropping cases right and left. DOJ has a little bit more on their plate. So I'm actually going to chalk some of this up to bandwidth. although it's not like there's a lot going on with Epstein and everything else, but I do think that they have a lot on their plate. So I'm still optimistic that Roger's case is going to come to a positive conclusion, but it shouldn't be. I mean, I think I put out a post this morning or yesterday. It's been 401 days that he's been stuck in Spain. It's absurd that it's gone on this long. And a thing that I find frustrating is, and I think part of the challenge with this is that you have a lot of people surrounding Trump that are Bitcoin maxis. And so, you always wonder what they're hearing about this. And I talked to some people that were at this Bitcoin conference last week or whenever it was. And I guess, nobody was talking about, there wasn't a lot of discussion about freedom at all. And there was, and there's still a lot of the same Roger rhetoric. So I hope that doesn't spill into this. And the unfortunate thing to me is that, Roger got picked up like 2 weeks, 3 weeks after publishing Hijacking Bitcoin. So nobody really had the benefit. So I'm sure the Trump's team's probably never heard of or read Hijacking Bitcoin, or even RFK or any of these other people, or even Vivek, who I spoke to. I bet none of them have even heard about it. So they've never heard of the alternative view. And so the problem is we're now so deep into this Bitcoin strategic reserve strategy that, it's a bit challenging. But I actually, again, I'm still optimistic because the case is such a clear-cut example of lawfare. And the parallels between what has happened to Roger are almost identical to some of the same things that have happened to Trump. So on the plus side, Trump is against lawfare. He can be, very empathetic about the exact circumstances and the way Roger's been treated. And, and if they do the research, they are going to find out that, all of this entire industry would not be where it is at, were it not for Roger being the first investor in the ecosystem and the first one to really, promote its global adoption, not just with Bitcoin, but with cryptocurrencies more broadly. So again, I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's hard for me to be too optimistic about politics at this point.
Yeah, it is pretty wild when you think about. I mean, it's sad that the fact that you have this huge Bitcoin conference, all these OGs that are there. They're all up Trump's ass. They're right there. The Trump administration is hanging out at the conference, and you have Free Ross, which is amazing. And was there any discussion of Free Roger? Like, did it come up in the conference at all?
I didn't hear about it coming up in the official program at all. I do know that there were some good people there that were talking about it. So I know, Mark Edge was there advocating for Ian, and there was a small group of people that were there, and they had actually flyers and pens and everything that they were handing out, and they had four different people on there that they were advocating for: Ian and Roman Storm and Roger and one other. I think one of the other Tornado Cash guys. I can't remember for sure, but they were out there kind of pounding the pavement. But I am unaware of it being mentioned at all by any of the people that were actually talking about it. And so, which is sad because there were 35,000 people in attendance, and some of the stuff that bothers me.
Half the companies that are there were like Roger had a part in like seeding and starting, right? Like,
yeah, and look, honestly, that's been a little bit frustrating. I'll give you an example. Roger was the first investor. He invested in XRP when it was one guy, literally one guy. So you could argue he was in a way, like the co-founder. And the last time I checked, the Garlinghouse and none of those people have actually spoken out against what's going on, and that's actually disgusting. And but other aspects of the Bitcoin conference, I don't even know how to deal with Cynthia Loomis announcing that U.S. generals overwhelmingly support the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, or that yesterday the Bitcoin Policy Institute is hosting the active, the deputy director or whatever of the CIA. I mean, it's gone so far afield of what it was supposed to be that it's both sad and actually laughable at the same time. It's almost hard to. But it's hard to watch. I mean, the conference looked pretty cringe, at least from an outsider perspective, watching some of the talks and then seeing people post about it.
Yeah, definitely was cringe. It didn't feel like we're winning, even though it should feel that way, given the price and the adoption, right? It feels like it's been co-opted. I mean, it feels like 70% of the conference was about stable coins.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that clip. They actually played a clip where they aggregated all of the times that stable coins were mentioned, and it was everywhere. I mean, JD Vance is talking about stable coins everywhere. Yeah. And I just don't think people have thought this through. I don't think it's been frustrating for me. I've been to different crypto conferences lately, and or on various X spaces, even with some people that are supposedly OGs, and they're like, "Oh yeah, stable coins are great for crypto adoption." I'm like, stablecoins are the antithesis of crypto adoption. If your whole point was to get away from fiat currency, and now you're taking fiat currency and you're adding 15 layers of risk, and you're adding programmability and tracking and censorship by multiple parties, and also by allowing both Congress and the Federal Reserve to oversee it, that's not crypto adoption. That's CBDC adoption in a backdoor execution, and people are not even thinking about it like this. They're just like, oh well, it's a crypto, so this is great. It must be great for adoption.
Well, I mean, the fact is there is great utility in a stable coin, though, right? Eventually, I think the concept of one will be obsolete. But there is obviously great utility. That's why we see so many governments pushing it aside. A lot of people just naturally, organically started using stablecoins because it does provide utility to, especially people that aren't in the United States, right? You could pay somebody with the dollar without going through the banking system. Yes, it could still, still being surveilled, whatever. But there is, even with that, more freedom than with what you can do with the traditional banking system. And we've seen them be organically adopted because there is utility in the concept of a stablecoin, for sure, right?
Yeah, no, there is utility, and one of the problems with crypto adoption has been the volatility of the price. Obviously, it's weird to call something that's pegged to fiat stable, given that the dollar's lost 26% of its value. Excuse me, yeah, fiat's lost 26% of its value just since COVID. So it's weird calling that stable. But
yeah, they should be called fiat coins, right?
They should be called should be called fiat coins. But most cryptos have actually had even more volatility, and so I know this has been an issue that I've had when I'm talking to merchants about adoption, is that they're concerned about this volatility, and it's it's all relative to the dollar. So there is utility in it, perceived by a lot of different players. But I will say that there's utility now. The utility becomes a lot worse once the Stable and Genius Acts pass. So right now, the regulations that they want to impose are not currently in place. And so, yes, they can track it, and they have tracked it. And there have been all kinds of examples of USDC and Tether working with the feds. But I mean, it's going to become just like the banking system is now. And most people don't realize that the existing banking system is already heavily surveilled. I wrote an article and I identified 13 different programs, from the Patriot Act to the Bank Secrecy Act to NSA bulk collection, and a whole variety of IRS using AI to analyze transactions, the Treasury Department doing reports. Anytime you do a transaction of more than $10,000, the Treasury automatically gets a report. And we just saw, like 6 weeks ago, the Trump administration decided, well, we want to crack down on illegal immigration, so we're going to change the $10,000 threshold to $200 in 30 zip codes in California and Texas. And they literally issued that as a policy memo. So people are not aware of exactly how trackable. I mean, our existing system is digital. You don't need a token to have. I mean, if you're using Oracle and Microsoft databases, you can track that, and they already are tracking that. So all of those laws and all of that tracking that applies to the existing banking system is going to apply to these stable coins. And then you're going to have monthly reporting requirements to the Federal Reserve to make sure that you actually have the reserves. And then on top of that, and this is the big issue for me, recently, as I've been digging into it more, they're going to require that stable coins be backed 1-to-1 by either U.S. Treasuries or dollars. So you can't use anything else as collateral. And the reason that they're doing this is what Elon Musk has been, complaining about heavily today on X. For anybody that's been looking, this big beautiful bill or whatever is going to add $30 trillion worth of debt over the next 10 years, nobody wants to buy our debt anymore. China actually put out a thing saying ditch the dollar. They're not interested in our treasuries. A few weeks back, we did a treasury auction, and there wasn't enough demand. The Fed had to come in and buy. We already have quantitative easing starting again because people saw that our credit's downgraded and that we are continuing to be fiscally irresponsible. So basically, I have quotes from David Sachs, who's our crypto AI czar, quotes from the Treasury Secretary, Bezent, and from Howard Lutnick, all saying that one of the benefits of this stablecoin hype is this is how they're going to sell treasuries. They're going to use the hype of this to basically make the stablecoin issuers the way that they're going to fund this debt. So if you're using a regulated stablecoin under the Genius and Stable Act, when it passes, you are funding all of these wars all over the world. You are funding central bank tyranny, and you're funding the surveillance on top of it. So it's actually even worse than previously expected because of this issue of it having to be backed directly by U.S. Treasuries. And so,
is part of the Genius Act that a certain percentage has to be backed directly by U.S. Treasuries?
My understanding is that both bills say 100%.
Really? Because like Tether right now, right, is backed by, I think they even hold Bitcoin, right? They hold gold.
We don't know if Tether's backed by anything. Tether's
theoretically.
Tether's never passed an audit. The closest thing that they have is an attestation from Howard Lutnick, who said, "Oh yeah, trust me, bro. The reserves are there." But yes, they had the CEO of Tether at this event last week, and he said that they have 100,000 Bitcoin and 50 tons of gold, or 50. I don't even know. It was a large amount of gold, allegedly based on the guy's statement. But yes, that collateral will not be eligible. So based on my read of these bills, they would have to. Let me take a step back. I have been saying for a long time, and I hold that this is true, that the whole purpose of this legislation is to force Tether and USDC to be acquired by large existing financial institutions in the United States so that they can comply with all of this stuff. I think that's actually a big part of it. But let's say that they are able to remain independent. If they are independent, then they're going to have to sell their gold, or they're going to have to sell their Bitcoin and buy treasuries. So there's a $150 billion market cap worth of Tether out there right now. I don't know what percentage of it, even based on what they claim, is treasuries versus Bitcoin or whatever. But under this legislation, they would be forced to.
It is. It's kind of a genius move if your goal is to strengthen the dollar, right? Whether you think that's a good policy for the U.S. government to have, and but I mean, it is. It's a pretty genius, effective move for them to do. And like you said, they're running out of options, right? We're in a position where governments around the world are looking to get rid of the dollar. Dollar seems to be like it hit in a peak, right, in terms of its global acceptance as the world reserve, and the trend might now be down, and this stablecoin thing could temporarily save the dollar.
Well, very temporarily, but then what this has kicked off is, remember, there are 134 countries representing 98% of global GDP working on CBDC projects. So the other countries that are working on CBDCs are looking at this and saying they understand what's going on. They understand that what the Trump administration is doing is they're using stable coins as a backdoor way to retain global reserve currency status with programmable digital money. And so as a result, they're bringing forward all of their CBDC programs to the point where the EU might launch their CBDC as early as October of this year. So now, from the standpoint, from our perspective as citizens, or anybody, whichever country you're in, this just accelerated digital tyranny around the world. So all anybody's going to be getting anywhere are digital surveillance tokens. Whether they're CBDCs are issued by a central bank doesn't really matter. And so again, and we're going to be funding all of these wars and all of this expanded spending.
Right.
So
The end result of crypto is the most used crypto, the crypto with the largest market cap, the thing that people are actually using around the world to transact, is essentially going to be a backdoored CBDC in the form of a US dollar stablecoin.
Yes, and think about this.
We're here already. I mean, it's like they're already like it's already like, right? Stablecoins are already used more than any other crypto by far, right? In terms of transactions.
They are. In fact, last year there was something like $27 trillion worth of transactions. And I want to look at my graph because I put something out. I want to make sure I actually was wrong on this, but it's projected that by 2030 there will be $120 trillion worth of stablecoin transactions, which, by the way, is more than ACH and Visa and MasterCard combined. So why this is lethal from a backdoor CBDC perspective is, let's say Harris had won, or when Biden was in office, he signed an executive order. They were pursuing a CBDC. But when you look at CBDC adoption around the world, there have been 11 countries that have adopted CBDCs. And even in China and in Nigeria and in other places, the adoption has been slow. So, I mean, if Harris rolled out a CBDC, it would probably take 10 years to get to where
screw it all up, right? It'd be the Fed trying to build it on their own, right?
It would be the Fed. They're buying the transaction volume. So this is it's like turbo cancer for CBDC adoption. So it really
that's what I'm saying. It is a genius move, right? It's an evil genius move. I mean, when did you first see the writing on the wall with this? When did you see this coming into fruition?
Well, so I mean, 2.5 years ago was when I first started looking at the CBDC issue, and that's when I wrote my book.
Yeah.
And then what it was I had followed. There were two pieces of legislation drafted before this genius bill, and it was called the Loomis-Gillibrand Act. And so this was Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming and then Gillibrand from New York. And so they had tried twice. They tried in, I think, 23 and in 24 to pass a stablecoin bill. So I analyzed these bills and I told everybody, look, these bills are bad. And I was actually trying to warn the privacy community. Loomis is anti-privacy. Even these bills were pro KYC AML, and it used a lot of the same rhetoric. So I was warning people about these bills for the last 2 years. But then when the Genius bill came up, initially I'm like, hey, maybe this is going to be better, right? Because they were trying to push this other thing when, we had a different composition in the Congress, and, we didn't have even though it's a name only, pro-crypto administration. And then I actually read through these bills. I'm like, they actually took the Loomis-Gillibrand bill and they made it worse. They actually explicitly put a moratorium on, in the stable bill, any new algorithmic stablecoins. So for 2 years, no one was allowed to create a new algorithmic stablecoin at all. And it just ratcheted up a whole bunch of different things. And then, including the one-to-one backing by treasuries in the dollar and more reporting. So they took a bad bill and then they actually managed to make it much worse. And then at the Bitcoin conference last year, when Loomis brought it up, it was brought up in the context of this being something that Trump wanted to do in his first 100 days. So then I'm like, okay, not only has this gone from a bad bill to a worse bill, but now it's become a strategic priority. And it's really only the last couple of weeks that I've noticed the quotes from Sachs and the Treasury Secretary and the Commerce Secretary about the importance of this. I think there's a quote from, let me find the exact quote from, I believe it's Sachs. Here we go. David Sachs. Stablecoins have the potential to ensure American dollar dominance internationally, to increase the usage of the US dollar digitally as the world's reserve currency, and in the process, create potentially trillions of dollars of demand for US treasuries, which can lower long-term interest rates. We already have over 200 billion in stable coins. It's just unregulated. I think that if we provide the legal clarity and legal framework for this, we could create trillions of dollars of demand for our treasuries practically overnight, very quickly.
It's CBDC adoption on steroids, like you said, without having to go through the whole process. Somebody saying here, Roger Ver was right. Bitcoin was hijacked by Wall Street, and now it feels like all of crypto is being hijacked by stablecoins. I mean, the end result is going to be everybody transacting with these stablecoins that are effectively CBDCs, and yeah, you'll have people storing their wealth in Bitcoin on a transparent ledger, and then you'll have people like us using Monero and other privacy coins, but it's not going to be easy to get the word out to Joe Schmo when it's going to be, people are going to get a lot of utility out of these things without realizing, what they're giving up. So it's going to be an uphill battle in terms of adoption. Like they are effectively co-opting things, I feel like, by moving forward with this. Like the technocracy is winning with this move. I mean, this is a major leap forward for technocracy. Granted, we have all these tools here that we can use to fight it and opt out, but shit, it's gonna be more of a battle, I feel like, than perhaps we were all thinking.
Well, it's more of a battle. We don't have as much time. One of the things that I do like is that our project's launched on Zeno. That's actually a privacy algorithmic stablecoin.
Yes, we got to talk about it because I see people. Excess Entertainment is asking thoughts on alternative stablecoins, USDH, BTC backed, US ETH backed, Frex. Algorithmic. Yeah, so let's get into that. And then I see X Entertainment has another question. Guys, please send your questions via xmrchat.com/Monero Talk. It's a way to send Monero-based super chats. You don't have to send us $10, $20. While people do that, we greatly appreciate it. Just for purposes of using Monero, you could send, a couple of cents. But please send your questions that way if you want me to bring them up on screen. Obviously, if I see a good question, I'll probably bring it up anyway. But just for purposes of using Monero, let's use it. Let's grow adoption. Sorry to interrupt, Darren. Go ahead, continue.
So there's a algorithmic stablecoin, privacy algorithmic stablecoin built on Zeno, and I think privacy is key. I mean, this ability to freeze transactions has already been problematic. I think it was just last week the guy that was involved in the meme coin from Malay in Argentina, I guess $56 million was frozen, I believe, of USDC. But I think everybody that's probably listening to this is already aware of the fact that USDC and Tether have been seized and frozen on numerous occasions. It's also, though, very dangerous. It's becoming very dangerous to have any kind of transparent crypto. I think I saw, was it last week or the week before, the daughter of some crypto CEO or whatever they showed footage of her being abducted in France. So I think they stopped it in time. But there are all kinds of examples now of kidnapping going on and violence. And, so you have these public ledgers, and actually I get pissed off. I mean, I saw somebody, like some Ethereum guy, put $300 million or whatever onto Kraken. And I'm like, it's kind of annoying that this stuff is announced. Even as an example, Michael Saylor shows up at this Bitcoin event and says, well, we're not going to provide proof of reserves. And then I think Arkham actually identified all of his wallets and put all the information out there. So I'm no Michael Saylor fan, but I mean, at the same time, it's like, dude, your shit's just been tracked. And so people need to be increasingly concerned about this. So I think privacy is actually critical. And it's not even just a function of trying to escape, technocracy. It's not just governments today and in the future that are going to be trying to censor your money and go after you. It's actually, criminals today that are increasingly sophisticated with their techniques. So I love this idea of not only a privacy stablecoin, but it's an algorithmic coin, and it's not backed by U.S. treasuries. It's not backed by dollars. It's actually backed by over-collateralized Zeno. So you get the benefit of having something that is pegged to the dollar. So you get all of the convenience that people want and expect and need. But you get privacy, you get low fees, it's fast, and you're not funding treasuries. You're not funding the war machine. You're not funding central bank tyranny. So I think it's actually a great idea, and it's actually gotten off to a really powerful start. I think it's only been around for like a month, and it's listed on. They signed up like 20 different exchanges. It's in Cake Wallet. It's in the Bitcoin.com wallet, Edge wallet, and then the Zeno main wallet. So I mean, this thing is like loaded and ready for adoption. There's a point of sale system which I'll be showing at PorkFest that accepts both, Zeno and FUSD. And so I'm hoping that people recognize this and just start moving into this quickly, because you said you're right. I mean, we're behind now, right? And the problem with this is, and this is one of the things I didn't like in general. So I was doing these workshops, and the reason that I've been doing workshops and introducing people to Cake and Monero and Zeno and everything else is I don't like to be a guy that runs around and tells people that, everything's really bad and then black pills people and then offers nothing. I mean, we seem to be completely loaded up with nothing but that. So the good news is we actually have solutions. So people can use Freedom Dollar. I love FUSD as being the ticker symbol for it. People can use Zeno. They can use Monero. There are wallets. There's, the XMR Bazaar marketplace. But we have to start using this stuff immediately. Like, this isn't none of this is about speculation in the price. If we need for people to actually start using these alternative private currencies to do normal day-to-day transactions, not even just like one-off, hey, this is cool, this is novel. I mean, like things like food and healthcare and like fundamental staples that people need, we need to get that transferred over to this alternative system. And we definitely have just the time period is now compressed by probably 5 years if this stuff happens. And again, it's tough. So your audience and the Zeno audience and the privacy community and the people at PorkFest, I mean, those are the main people that are even paying any attention to this. Everyone else is just is oblivious to this. Everybody else is like, hey, let's use civil asset forfeiture and taxes to buy our digital gold and pump our bags, and let's get the CIA involved. And these
it's wild, man. It's wild. It's fully co-opted. Danish crypto tipped 50 cents. We need to keep spreading Monero. I love the concept of Zeno with smart contract with privacy. Yeah, I love those concepts. And honestly, what I was perhaps the thing I was most excited about with regards to Zeno was that they were focused on trying to launch, or have, theoretically somebody could build a algorithmic stablecoin on top of Zeno, and now it exists. So we're seeing the first iteration of that. I know there are those, and I'm in that ballpark as well, that have concerns about the concept in general of an algorithmic stablecoin, where you're backing it with the asset that's running the network itself that it's running on. It's kind of like, feels a little bit like a perpetual motion machine, and hasn't really yet been proven that these things can work where they just kind of back themselves, right? We've seen catastrophes, right? What was Lunar? What was it? Lunar? I think
Terra Luna and a variety of things. But I think what's different about
Haveno obviously was never able to make it work. So yeah, what is your thought on that in terms of what's the difference between what we're seeing here with FUSD on Zeno and what some of the other attempts have made?
So first of all, I mean, it's over collateralized, and I don't know exactly what the dynamics were with those other coins, but you can see. Zeno has a feature that a lot of people aren't aware of. It's privacy by default, but there is an auditable wallet feature where you can actually have a view key. So I actually have and anybody can get the view key from the Freedom Dollar website, and you can load it into your Zeno wallet or your Cake wallet or whatever, and you can see in real time what's actually backing the stable coin. So that's actually a really nice feature. But I think that there's something that a lot of people are missing. So obviously over collateralization is key, but there's some other things going on with. So I think Zeno is up to, I just saw yesterday, I think hit 16,700 transactions or something like that for the day. And
really,
yeah, and the way Zeno works. So Zeno's also going to be used with confidential layers. So people are going to be able to bridge their Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum into Zeno using this blockchain called Bridgeless, which is it uses threshold signatures, and I won't go into all the details there. But the point is, Zeno is the gas for all of this. Well, so interesting thing about Zeno is, once the Zeno network is doing more than 144,000 transactions a day, it actually becomes deflationary based on the burning of the fees. So
at what, at 140,000
at 144,000, I believe. And so so you actually have a situation here where, and by the way, none of this is even about speculation. This is the whole point of Zeno is you use it. It's a blockchain that you wrap around other assets so that you can make those other assets private. But the number of use cases, I mean, if we're already at 16,700 transactions or whatever it is, and that's before, I mean, there are 1 million FUSD tokens right now. So that's great for, the first month. But I mean, we're not even scratching the surface of where this thing goes. So you add confidential layer, point of sale systems and everything else. I don't think it's going to be very long before this becomes a deflationary coin. So just as people are needing it and using it to make their assets private, you're actually going to see the supply decrease, which I think is going to be great news in terms of making sure that the peg is always reached.
I mean, Andre, one of the founder, I mean, he's just, my take on him is he's a very honest guy, right? Like that's, I could be getting completely fooled, but that's why like I said, I was most excited about the stablecoin thing that we're doing, but in terms of like why I give Zano deference in the first place, obviously anybody who knows me knows I'm Monero, right? I'm all in on the Monero. I want to see, I grow Monero adoption. That I don't need to get into that, but I do think the fact that Andre was the original creator of the CryptoNote protocol, and just the way he speaks about Zano and the project, because even that feature you're talking about, he was kind of upfront about it, being like, it's not even something necessarily that I wanted to add, because it's just kind of like kind of plays into the number go up hype, but it is actually there. I don't know how significant it's going to be, but I think that might be a little bit more hype than utility, but to be determined. I mean, I guess if there's tons of transactions happening, then it is going to actually have an effect, and it's going to start to
Well, I mean, but I'll tell you, I mean, we just discussed. I actually think it's going to be huge. Simply because stable coins are huge, and because people are going to find out. I mean, it's predominantly me going around and talking about this, but this is really my first interview that I've done about this, but I am planning to hit really hard. I mean, I'm going to see if I can get back onto Alex Jones and go through the whole thing, because people need to be aware of this. But now there's an actual solution that you can use immediately, and you can swap in and out of Zeno. I mean, you can use the P2P exchange. There's a AMM there all the time. So at any point in time, you can swap between the two. It's, like I said, it's on 20 different exchanges. So this might actually turn out to be the first real killer app, and it might have real transaction value, because again, these other coins can be expensive to use. Here's another point, and by the way, I find this to be beyond comical, right? So here we're sitting here, and we're in the middle of this trade war with China again, and this is the whole thing that everybody's talking about every day, and it's already having a negative, the expected negative impact, but it's all about targeting China. So I don't know if you know this or not, but the blockchain that is most used to mint Tether is actually Tron. And Tron is a project of Justin Sun, who's a Chinese national, and Tron is completely centralized. There are only like 26 nodes or something. So we're basically so not only can Congress and the Federal Reserve interfere with this, in theory, the Chinese government could also add another layer of risk to a Tether stablecoin that's built on Tron. Now, so Trump on the one hand is sitting here saying China's bad, and then did you know that the largest single investor in the Trump meme coin is Justin Sun? And that Justin Sun invested, I think it was north of $10 million into World Financial Group, his family's DeFi project. So, I mean, and again, I don't think anybody here is expecting logical consistency or principle related to the Trump administration and this stuff. But that's a pretty scary proposition. And by the way, I think a lot of the MAGA people that are buying his propaganda about buy USA and China's been ripping us off, a lot of those people might be interested to understand that a Chinese national has kind of control over the blockchain on which most of the stable coins are actually issued. I think that I think some people are going to find that arc to be of interest, but again, I actually think this is going to be huge, and it's just come out of nowhere. I mean, again, all of this is in a month, and the good news is that every time one of these exchanges is added for Freedom Dollar, Zeno obviously goes along for the ride as well. So this is helping to open up the entire ecosystem. But then you add on to that, again, confidential layers. So now the $2 trillion worth of market cap of Bitcoin plus the 300 billion or whatever of Ethereum, once those folks start realizing, and it's amazing to me that actually people still don't even understand that Bitcoin and Ethereum are not anonymous. There are still some people that actually don't get that. I was in a political chat room. There was some political exchange, and it was actually complete. There's stuff going on right now in New Hampshire where they're trying to basically pass a law at the state level that gets rid of local zoning laws. And so then there's a MAGA group that's like, well, no, we want local control. This is the state taking control of our property, which is not exactly how that works. It's kind of like, do you think we should have local, your town council should determine whether you have a Second Amendment right or not? But anyway, it's turned into this whole thing. And so part of what people are saying is, yeah, these Bitcoin people using their anonymous Bitcoin. And, so I'm kind of like, hey, listen, I can tell you from the 3 experiences that I've had in the last 6 months of people that are dealing with business partners or marital disputes or whatever, where there's now like a whole industry of private investigators that are trained in chain analysis, and they've been now tracking everybody's transactions. So there are a lot of people that will say, oh, well, I've got Bitcoin, but I've never touched an exchange. It doesn't matter. If you did a peer-to-peer transaction with somebody, but that person was rated and they were able to connect your account, even from that peer-to-peer transaction, all of that stuff is getting logged into a common database that now private investigators can access. So they'll throw in a public key and then boom, all of this stuff is mapped out, and all they're doing is building this database and adding to it every single day. So I think that the application of Zeno through confidential layer, that's also going to bring a huge amount of demand. We still have to build the point of sale systems and everything else. I don't know if I told you, I mean, I wrote a plugin for WooCommerce.
Yeah.
And I'm going to update that to include FUSD. Honestly, I did it during the fast. Part of that, we didn't talk much about the fast, but
that's okay. We're getting important information out there.
Well, I went through this period from day 14 to 21 during the fast where I had so much energy where I'm like, I'm coding. So I created a working point of sale system. I developed this thing, and now that I'm done with the fast, I'm trying to go back and figure out what the hell I did. I'm not even kidding about this. So I'm like, I've actually spent a week trying to how did I actually even do this? And so that's a bit embarrassing, but it speaks a lot to what fasting is like. But also, I'm kind of in this thing. But now anybody using WooCommerce, I think there are 8 million storefronts that use WooCommerce with WordPress. Now you can take Zeno, and then I'll add on Freedom Dollar and everything else. But we do have to get people.
I mean, even Monero's lagging there, right? Like we use Monero Gateway, which is really not up. The development on that isn't really kept up well at all. The guy who created it, he's fantastic, but he doesn't really put too many resources into it. Nobody's really picked up the ball. And then there's BTC Pay Server, Monero. You can use Monero through that, but it's a little bit cumbersome to set it up. Like for somebody who's simple, who's using WooCommerce is very user-friendly. WordPress very user-friendly. You just add a plugin. BTC Pay Server isn't quite there yet for like the total noob e-commerce person that's just like, how do I add Monero to my website? I want to accept it. How do I do it? So even Monero, as long as it's been around, it's all about adoption. Like it's still lagging there, and I've been sounding the alarm on that for quite some time. But we are seeing developments with BTC Pay Server. I think that problem will soon be fixed. But yeah, I totally see I know you've been sounding that alarm a lot too, right? Because if the goal here is for people to be able to use it, like we get these people, we convince them, And then they're like, all right, well now how do I do it? Like, I have a, a site, I'm selling stuff there, I'm selling whatever. I would love to accept Monero. Oh, well, you got to, well, you may not be, it's not as easy as, like we need to be able to be like, you just click this button here and you're accepting Monero as easy as you're, accepting PayPal.
Yeah, and by the way, I plan on adding Monero as well. I'm not, I'm starting with these projects in the Zeno ecosystem, but I believe in, I'm not a maximalist. I mean, other than being kind of a privacy maximalist. So I use Monero. So I still predominantly use Monero day to day. So I'm going to add Monero. It's probably going to be tricky for me to figure out how. The hardest part for me in getting this to work was, getting the Zeno node to work and to be able to actually confirm the payments. And obviously, as you know, you have to wait for all the confirmations. And so then there's all this, how are you going to handle this? And that's going to be the tricky part. But I plan on adding Monero. And then I plan on adding these bridged assets. So imagine now you've got your bridged Bitcoin, your bridged Ethereum, and that's been tokenized on Zeno. And now you can spend those on any of these WooCommerce sites. And so, so the potential is there, and now marketplaces and all these other tools. So I'm very excited and optimistic that we actually finally have stuff that's working, but now we just have to hit the pavement. And I don't know about you, but my experience has been when I get outside of the Liberty space and outside of the crypto space, most people have never even heard of the use case for crypto as being a currency. Like it's actually mostly known. The whole space is known as a speculative investment. People don't even realize that people used to use Bitcoin to buy things. And it's like, so I mean, trying to like educate people through all the layers of stuff. But I do think we've got an opportunity. And I think people are starting to get upset about Palantir and about digital IDs and about all of this stuff. People are starting to wake up to this. And so, I don't think there's going to be necessarily a pushback from Congress, but there's going to be backlash from the people, and maybe their eyes are open. It's kind of even like this health freedom thing. Last year I gave a talk to a group of people, and I said, listen, America 1.0 is over. This voting doesn't matter. And I made my whole case, and everybody's like, no, Trump can solve this. And if RFK gets in and everything else, it's like, look at this. They're like one day they're like, well, we're going to say that the COVID shots only now apply to the elderly and people with one or more risk factors. And then the next day they approve a Moderna shot. And people are like, all right, I'm out, right? People are now like beyond done with this stuff. And that's good for us. That's good for anybody that's exiting and building and creating alternative solutions. So there are some positive trends.
We got some Monero-based super chats I want to bring up. DP tipped $2. Thanks for all you both do. Can you guys talk a bit about Zeno versus Tari from a technical perspective? Why use one over the other? Yeah, I feel like I don't really want to get into the weeds on that. We did, if you want to hear like the most critical take of Zeno, because that's what we do here on Monero Talk and Monerotopia, right? We keep it real. Like I said, there's a lot. Me personally, I'm interested in Zeno for the reasons I was talking about earlier. And because of the contributions they've made, too, to Monerotopia and helping the conference. They've just been really honest, good, open actors in the space, whether you like their tech or not. In my opinion is they've been acting as honest actors. They've been coming to the conferences, answering the difficult questions. So if you want to learn like really the good and bad, we did an episode on Zeno, I don't know, I guess a couple of months back. We had somebody on Untraceable, and he really was asking them the tough questions. We had Zeno on as well. So you could watch that if you want to get like the most critical side of things. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of good. Comparing it to Tari, I don't know. I mean, they're kind of, I guess they're both trying to, in ways, be the, private Ethereum, right? One of the positive things that is often noted about Tari is its merge mined with Monero. I've tried getting the Zeno guys to consider doing that, but I mean, long term, they want to move to purely proof of stake, and that's another reason why you might be interested in Zeno, because like kind of ultimate hedge, right? So it's not ultimately, it doesn't even want to be proof of work; it wants to move to proof of stake, and they've done some really innovative things in that area. Actually, working with Monero devs, they worked with Co to develop their the first private proof of stake system. And so they likely probably won't ever be merge mined with Monero. I don't know, maybe it's possible, but even then, it's my understanding ultimately it'll be temporary, because I think they want to move totally to proof of stake. I mean, Andre thinks one day Monero will move to proof of stake.
Yep. Yes.
If I heard that just from some jackass with an altcoin, I'd probably be like, what, you don't know what you're talking about. But once again, Andre created the first implementation of CryptoNote, right? He's not just he's super OG. You can consider him like a Satoshi of Monero, right? He was in that crew that created what became Monero. So I think I listen to the guy when he speaks, whether or not he's right. He should certainly be considered. I don't know if you have things to say on Tari.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to even get in. I don't want to get it. I haven't really tracked it that much. I mean, I know it's great that it just launched after 7 years or whatever, but I haven't spent a lot of time on that. And again, I want to say, there's room for multiple players, so I don't even want it to devolve into this. But I will say that I'll back up your point. I mean, I've gotten to actually spend a lot of time in person now with Andre, and he is not only is he an OG, but he truly is. He's honest, and he's also incredibly humble, and he's always searching for the truth. So, for instance, one of the things that I noted was at Monerotopia, I mean, he was sitting in on the other talks, and so he talks to Luke Parker, he talks to Monero devs. They share information, and he goes out and they research and they talk to other people and other blockchains, and constantly are looking for the thing that works, and they test things, and he takes what he does very seriously. He certainly doesn't want to screw something up, but I mean, Zeno's been around for a long time, 5 years as Zeno, but it even kind of has a precursor to that. So to me, the reason I like Zeno, because I like the team. These projects are about teams, and these guys have been committed to decentralization, censorship resistance, and privacy. Those are truly core values. And Pavel's the great product guy and co-founder. I mean, I've just been really impressed with the team. So I don't want to say anything, negative about Tari. And also there's certainly room for multiple players and multiple implementations, but very excited about
that. Yeah. And people could go watch, they could go watch our Tari episode as well. We had Fluffy Pony on and Naveen. And we really got in the weeds on Tari. And so, I don't think I ever did. What is your take? Because the biggest criticism that is thrown at Zeno, and really Tari as well, honestly, I think more is thrown at Zeno than Tari, which I don't understand why. It's the criticism should be the same for both, which is this concept of a pre-mine. And in terms of the distribution of the coin, whether or not ultimately it's going to be fairly distributed, given that there was such a large pre-mine. And Tari has this same issue as well. I mean, they have they had investors that are getting a chunk of the Tari that's getting issued, right? This is often something that Zcash is criticized by Monero people, me included, right? Like we always list that as one of the negatives. That they had this central corp, right, where there were investors involved and people that were promised parts essentially of the coin, the amount of coin that's out there. What is your take on that, and how do you justify that to people that have concerns over it?
I mean, if people have concern, first of all, I don't know what kind of it perplexes me that people think that people earlier into a project shouldn't own more of it. I don't even know where we got off on a tangent thinking that. And what it is we use Bitcoin as
people model. See Bitcoin as but even Bitcoin, right? Like the OG, the people that started Bitcoin, theoretically anybody could have mined it, but who was mining it? It was it was 5 guys, right? It wasn't
right. So there's this idea, and by the way, outside of crypto, people think this is a retarded argument. So this idea that it's a fair launch because people who were able to have access to a cryptography bulletin board in 2009 or whatever. When you actually go back, because I did this at one point, I'm like, what percentage of people were actually had access and exposure to this? That's not a fair launch. If you want fair launch, go with WorldCoin. Put your retina into the orb and join Sam Altman's thing. If that element of it is that important, so, and by the way, it was one of the things that I looked at the Zeno thing, the website first off, and I saw it was hybrid, and that was a negative reaction that I had, and then I realized that I was coming off of getting out of this, which flavor of Bitcoin is going to be the best, and then I started really thinking critically about, well, why do we have this cult-like belief in proof of work or that no pre-mine is the way to go, because Bitcoin was completely hijacked. The lack of funding for Bitcoin as a project is why it ended up being funded by MIT, who developed all three CBDC pilots. It's why it ended up then getting funding from Blockstream with ties to DeCastries and the Bilderberg Group and ties to MasterCard and everything else. So the lack of the project having its own funding, I would argue, is why it's now slow, expensive, non-fungible surveillance digital gold instead of peer-to-peer digital cash for the world. So but then beyond that, Zeno's been around for 5 years. Well, the pre-mine that everybody talks about is in an auditable wallet. You can see they still have, I think, over half of it left. They've been incredibly judicious with how they've allocated the money, and it's not like Zeno's been like this. When I got involved last year, it was like at a $30 million market cap. So it's not like these guys have been grinding. I mean, Andre and Pavel, these guys have not exactly been living like this, in a golden palace lifestyle. This has been a real grind, even though they had a pre-mine to work out. They've had to work with. They've actually had to be very careful with the expenditures, but the proof of stake actually provides ongoing development support. So they've got they have got the pre-mine, and then it's staked, and so that provides ongoing funding for the project. I think ongoing funding for a project is a great idea, and I don't know why people think the absence of it is a positive thing. But if you don't like it, if somehow you have some ideological view that if you didn't get access to a proof of work, link announcing the project at some point 5 years ago, that you can't possibly participate in the blockchain project because that's your thing, then don't use it. I mean, it's pretty much. I think it's that simple. I find it to be an odd thing to obsess over, and I certainly don't feel. I've only been involved with this project for a year, so but I don't in any way feel like slighted because there's a pre-mine, nor do I feel bad that people were involved in the project earlier than I was and that they may own more coins than I do. That it doesn't seem to me to be something that would make sense to be perturbed about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my opinion on it has evolved a little bit, just in terms of, because if you obviously no crypto is distributed perfectly, right? Even Bitcoin, even Monero. Monero, a lot of it was mined. It had a very fast emission schedule. A lot of it was mined early. Is that now? Obviously, I wouldn't compare that to Zeno or Atari, right? It's still anybody who was able to mine it, whatnot. But the fact is, it was that. Does that make it perfectly fair? No. I mean, it's impossible, right? The Bitcoin may have been the closest thing, but even that, like I said, I mean, it was years before the mass, anybody who was really accessing Bitcoin to mine it. It was a small group of cypherpunks that really got to take advantage of it, and they deserve that advantage, right? That's capitalism. That all makes sense. So yeah, that criticism doesn't really concern me that much. I mean, there's people that are concerned that it ultimately came from Bullberry, I think, right? Bullberry it's called, right?
Bullberry,
yeah, which was really like the first crypto note coin. and eventually Monero was forked away from that, and so there also, I think, is just this rivalry too between factions of the early crypto note people, the early Monero crypto note people and the early Bullberry crypto note people. So they've kind of put Andre and Zeno in this like category of evil. Like they're on like they were the bad guys in the early days of crypto note, which I was falling for that FUD before I kind of got to know Zeno and meet Andre and realize, that's not really the case. Like, yeah, he was working with these guys that eventually Monero forked off from, but he wasn't necessarily the bad player there. He was just the guy who was building. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
that I want to add one other thing. Zeno does not present itself as the global UBI fair currency for the world. It's a protocol to make assets private. So I don't even think that the argument even stands up based on what the intent of it is. Zeno is just claiming that it's a privacy protocol that allows you to tokenize assets. There's nothing about it that inherently. So I mean, look, the big use case for this, more people will use, in my opinion, FUSD. Freedom Dollar than will use Zeno for day-to-day transactions. I believe that will be the case 12
Very
months
possible.
from now, right? So it does it matter if what the early distribution is, because it's not even about what the fairness was. People want it because it's a technology that makes it so that you can have a stable coin that's private. Well, that it doesn't matter how equal or fair the perception of the distribution was 5 or more years ago. It's actually irrelevant.
Danish crypto tip. I don't know if I said this one or Zeno got me hyped for sure. It's the first time we got a privacy focused blockchain by default. And for a privacy maxi, this could be a great tool. Monero's king, but all real privacy focused projects gets my love. Yeah, and especially the fact that it's so closely related to, Monero in terms of it's both crypto note and the founder is the guy who essentially started Monero in one way or the other. Monero grew from his work. And Edward is bringing up good points. Tari and Zeno are taking different technical approach. Each takes different trade-offs for scalability and privacy. Yeah, like I said, you get into the weeds. You can watch the show I did with Tari, and we talk about they use Mimblewimble. It's a whole thing, right? There's the layer 1, and then there's a layer 2 that's going to be built on top of it. That's where all the smart contract stuff is going to take place, and all the NFT stuff is going to take place. Even Tari, as it exists now today, is not fully formed. It doesn't have its second layer yet, where most of the promised magic is going to happen. Big difference between Zcash and Tari and Zeno is that Zcash had a dev tax. Zeno Tari took a different approach. Yeah, they don't have the dev tax. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to make this a whole thing about Tari and Zeno and all that. That could, I think we said enough on that.
The one thing I would add to this is I really hope we can actually have some unity around the fact that the actual threat here is
that's the good good segue to the unity topic for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I use all of these things. I enjoy working with you. I enjoy using Zeno, Zeno and Monero and everything, and we need all of these things. And by the way, the other thing is, I think it's great that there are competing technologies, because who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I was at this conference in Amsterdam, and I haven't thought about quantum computing for a while. And I sat down with this guy, and he created this quantum doomsday clock. And he's like, and so he predicts based on what's going on with qubits and then error correcting and everything else, the date by which basically everybody's Bitcoin is going to be able to be hacked. And it's like 2 years away. It's like 2 years and 3 months away. Now, I don't know if that thing is actually true, but now I've actually started to investigate this. But I think that it's good that we have different projects implementing and innovating. And actually, that's one of the things I love about the privacy space in general, because think about what Bitcoin's doing. Bitcoin is deciding, are we going to strip away functionality? Are we going to make the blocks smaller? Are we going to strip out your ability to attach data to the blocks or not? There's no actual real innovation there. And whether it's and Monero and Zeno and Tari and Zcash, all of these projects are innovating. And who knows? I mean, there might be something might happen that impacts one project, and then we have to switch back and forth, and there's going to be a continual stream of development, I think that's a good thing. I think that market dynamic and the fact that people are innovating is why the privacy coin space is going to succeed. And you know, collectively, this is our way out of this centralized tyranny. So I hope it doesn't devolve. I just did an interesting interview yesterday with Steve Patterson, who's the co-author of Hijacking Bitcoin.
Yes, I was supposed to have him on. I spoke to him months ago, but I think I'll get him on as well at some point.
Well, so the topic was supposed to be, you know, the topic that we're having today, and then we had a little bit of it ended up being a 2-hour conversation about religion. We didn't even talk about Bitcoin. We didn't talk about any of this stuff, other than to say this. And by the way, this is going to be one of our talks at PorkFest, which is Bitcoin was hijacked. So what? What do we do next? And the point of this is that Bitcoin was hijacked, and you know, whatever, people may want to argue about that. It was pretty clear that it was hijacked, but how do we make sure that Monero and the whole privacy coin space and doesn't get hijacked as well? How do we make sure that bad actors don't get involved? Because you know what? Divide and conquer works, whether it's just rogue actors or the state. Propaganda works. Censorship works. So the thing is, we know why and how Bitcoin was hijacked, but have we learned enough to prevent it from happening again within this privacy space, which is so critical at this point to human freedom? And I don't think we do have an answer, but a starting point would be to get a group of us together to have a conversation about it and maybe figure out a way to thwart attacks that will absolutely be coming. We absolutely know they're going to be coming. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you know, whether or not it's an actual real attack or it's just the community among themselves losing unity, right? And this is part of Ross's speech, right? He was talking about the 3 important things: decentralization, freedom, decentralization, and unity is the way he was phrasing it. And unity is essential, right? So we're all very different people. The beauty of something like Monero is you can be from any walk of life, any color, any religion, any political persuasion. You could be a Nazi and use Monero, right? You could be anything. But we need unity in terms of fighting the fight that we're up against here, which is the people that ultimately want to try to stop us from growing adoption. And part of that unity and messaging requires us to maybe put some of our political ideologies or whatever it may be aside for the greater cause, because we don't want to push out people from the tent that want to come in for the right reasons, right? So it's a little abstract and a little hard for people to understand that, right? Like, yes, Monero is free speech money, but that doesn't mean that all of us need to be so open and accepting of all the speech that its users are portraying, right? Just because Monero's free speech money doesn't mean I support all the transactions that are being made on Monero. There's probably a whole bunch of them that ethically I would disagree with. But we need unity around the fact that this is just a tool, and we can't be fighting each other with politics and who should be using Monero, what Monero should really represent. We need to be unified that it's just a tool that anybody can use to transact privately peer-to-peer. And, if we're out there and we're representing Monero, and that's really what we're supposedly trying to do, then maybe we should be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to be divisive, right? Which people may, but free speech, yes, I get it. But we're also trying to build a system here that requires like mass adoption for it to win. So especially in these early days, we need to make sure we're not turning in against each other. We need to be unified in the fact that we're all using this permissionless tech and maybe not pointing at each other. Your political persuasion is that, my political persuasion is this. As tempting as it is to talk about those things, I think the smart thing to do, especially in what I still consider early days, is to put those differences aside and really focus on the tech, the tool, and the concept of opting out and using it and beating the state surveillance system. Like, that is the enemy. I don't think we need to, that's the problem. People want to make the enemy a group of people, right? They want to make it people of a certain religion or whatever it may be, people that aren't white. Like, I don't know who they want to make the enemy should be technocracy, right? That's the enemy, right? The enemy is wanting to stop the creation of a technocracy, and we have this tool that will allow us all to do that together in a permissionless way, right? The enemy is not some group of people. Sure, you could say the central bank, you can say, the technocratic state, but I think we should stay away from labeling it as, certain groups of people. And the reason I'm talking so specifically about this is because this is what we're seeing in Monero, right? And this is the what I've been dealing with. And people, and it could be could be an attack. It could be, who knows who's behind it. I don't know if the feds are behind it, or it could just be a natural uprising. And, given Monero's nature that it is permissionless and anybody can use it, the early adopters are going to be those most in need. And that could be some fringe political group. We've always said that, and that makes sense, right? Like, yes, free speech money. If you're out doing something that's considered controversial, that's political, you're probably going to want to use Monero to raise your funds and to spend, and I get that. So maybe it is a natural uprising, but the message to all that I've been trying to give is, number one, I don't agree with those politics. I want to make that clear, and it should be clear that just because you use Monero doesn't mean you're of that political ilk. And number two, to those communities, if they are actually genuinely here to help Monero, because that's what I'm hearing from them, like, no, we're not the feds, we're not this, we are just people that need Monero, and we need it because of our politics, actually. Well, okay, if that's the case, try to keep your politics separate from the promotion of Monero itself is what I would like to say. But it's going to play out the way it's going to play. We can't control the people, but I do think it's important to get our side out there and try to constantly fight more for unity than division.
Well, it's well said, and I do think that the technocrats, when you look at who the technocrats are, it is not one race or one group. And actually, there also aren't very many of them. So the problem is that they know that divide and conquer works. So there's a whole big issue. I mean, I look at social media feeds now, and it's like there's trying to stoke black versus white. I mean, there's just like, and here's why they do that. Every time they can create these big divisions, then there's some violent act, whether it's real or a false flag, and then they put in more surveillance. I mean, it works every time. Right. And so we've got to stop that from happening. From my perspective, I agree that it'd be good to put our best foot forward, because we need to get new people involved. I think part of the problem with privacy space is that it is always like, it can't all just be a Guy Fawkes mask and this is going to be about underground stuff. It's actually more the fact, the way I look at it is, everything's going to be black market. Food is going to be black market. Your ability to use, buy alternative medicine. I mean, what we're looking at with technocracy is things that are legal today to buy are going to become illegal. And so we want to cast a bigger tent. It's kind of like, to me, I've gotten involved with libertarian stuff before, and it's like, you have this great opportunity to promote freedom. And then what do you pick? You want to jump in on age of consent as being your top issue. It's like you're not going to grow movement by taking the most divisive thing, when you actually have a technology that actually can apply broadly to everyone. Everyone deserves private money. There's no one that this shouldn't be applicable to. It shouldn't be a niche. It's actually something that's vital for everyone anywhere in the world. And I think it's great. I love seeing some of the stuff that's going on with Zeno. There was a meetup in Africa like last week. 200 people showed up, and so people all over the world are actually starting to understand the importance of these technologies. So we want to cast a bigger net. I mean, obviously, people are going to say whatever they're going to say. We should look out for intentional, feds and state actors that are going to try to create all kinds of havoc. I mean, and the
attack is, they basically make the brand of Monero something that state actors have an excuse to try to attack and eliminate, right? It's like a false flag, right? Like, so obviously if we saw tomorrow that Monero was used in some big hack, right? You know, that's could potentially be a problem, right? Monero's unstoppable, but you know, I don't want to see the U.S. government ban Monero, right? And I don't want to give them an easy excuse to do it, right? I'm not trying to help that cause. Yeah, bad actors are using Monero, and I pointed out because it shows that Monero works, right? Monero is the most used coin on dark marketplaces because it works. I'm not out there saying I support the people that are doing it. I'm just pointing it out as, yeah, that shows that it works. Always been, you know, the fact that Nazi groups want to use Monero, it shows that it works. But all that being said, if these people are actually now that are on Twitter that are claiming to be out there for the best interest of Monero and grow Monero, you know, they should be playing a little bit smarter and not make Monero a target for those reasons, unless they are just attackers and they're literally they're feds and they're trying to you know, make the main brand of Monero this fringe thing that can then be attacked, and there's an excuse for governments to turn on it and say, you know, Monero bad. Yeah. So yeah, guys, you know, be wary of that. I'm seeing somebody's commenting, is this a lot? Yeah, Lucifer, you're always complaining here that we don't pull, you know, send a Monero XMR chat and I'll pull up your comments. How about that? He's always like, no, this is not recorded. We're pulling up the chats live. Sorry if I missed something that you said. If you really want me to pull it up, go to xmrchat.com/Monero Talk and send it as a Monero-based super chat. You could send 5 cents and I will bring it up. So yeah, we should at least let's shill PorcFest for a second. Let's shill the event directly. So Aaron and I are going to be doing this. We're going to have like the main tent, right? There's like 2 main tents at PorcFest. We'll be one of 2.
Yep.
But both will be privacy coin focused on learning, which I think is
which is absolutely perfect given that Ross Ulbricht is showing up.
Yes.
I'm happy about that. I don't view it as competitive. You know, I think that, you know, in some ways, based on the number of people that are likely to show up for this thing, it's probably good to have 2
yes,
tents.
it's going to be fantastic.
So,
I mean, just so people don't know what we're talking about, I think the other tent is like Pirate Chain and Anarcho Poco people. By the way, if they're listening, you know, we would have been happy to have them collaborate with us and been a part of it. I guess we never effectively reached out to them, which is fine. You know, it's a fantastic sign that these are the 2 main tents at PorcFest. People that are looking to get the word out on privacy coins, and like we were just saying, unity, right? So here's an example of it. We're applauding the fact that we're seeing more people that are interested in these topics. And yeah, I think perhaps the most exciting thing is the fact that Ross will be there with his mother. In years past, obviously, it's only been his mother that's Lynn that's been there. You know, a lot of people that attend PorcFest have had opportunities to speak to her, got to know her. I've gotten to know her a little bit. I don't think nearly as well as Aaron. My daughter has spent some good time with her last year. She was hanging out at the Monero tent and playing with one of Lynn's relatives, and so she's kind of become a mainstay at PorcFest. But now she's achieved her mission. And she's freed her son, and now he is attending PorcFest. I mean, this is like kind of a crowning moment. He went to the Bitcoin conference, which is super cool. You know, I think a lot of the people that were really helping Ross came out of PorcFest. I mean, Aaron, you could speak to that. I'm not trying to even say I'm one of those people. Like, yes, I was always free Ross, but I mean, Aaron took steps to actually try to get these things done, work with the Libertarian Party, right? That's really where the magic happened.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as instrumental with Ross, so I don't want to take. I first met Lynn in 2014, and I did try to help. So my stepmother was the co-chair of the RNC, And so I actually tried to go to her to get her to help, and she's a drug warrior. And so she actually refused to help. And I haven't talked to her for like, not because of that, but like I haven't talked to her for, in part because of that, been rolling into some other things. I haven't talked to her for 8 years. So I do not claim any credit other than just being, you know, generally supportive. And, you know, when I ran for president and so on and so forth, but there are other people at PorcFest that have been just huge advocates that attended the trials, and PorcFest gave Lynn a platform every single year, and and again, it did filter into the Libertarian Party. So I don't want to take any credit for it, but I do think that the PorcFest movement and community does deserve a huge amount of credit, and he's going to have a huge welcoming at PorcFest, unlike at the Bitcoin conference where Michael Saylor spoke before Ross, and I guess a whole bunch of people left after Saylor's talk and did not attend Ross's talk. I assure you that Ross's talk will be sold out. I will say an exciting thing about our tent is we're going to have Lynn Ulbricht there. Lynn has launched a new initiative called Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing, and they have identified 7 other, victims of lawfare and government overreach that they're already helping right out of the gate. So she's going to have, a table or share a table at our tent, and she's going to speak, and I think be on some panels too. And I'm going to spend some time with her at Freedom Fest next week before this. So I'm really excited about this. I mean, and I think actually having Lynn as part of what we're doing, and some of the other speakers who are also Doug, that you brought in, that are lawyers that are advocating on behalf of some of these people.
Yes, we have Tor and Michael. They've been at 2 of the past Monerotopias. So yeah, they'll be a great contribution. We got to add a bunch of speakers we'll add it to the site. So it doesn't fully reflect what's going on right now. So we'll start to add the different speakers that will be there. So yeah, if anybody's considering going, definitely is PorcFest sold out at this point? I don't even know. It might be
I don't know if it's sold. I haven't heard that it's sold out. I think I would have heard, because we've got a promo code of Free Roger. So if you want to go, you can get 10% off your ticket by using the code Free Roger. So I do think that there are still some tickets left, but my guess is it's going to be a pretty crowded event, and it's going to. It's I think it's just the fact that Ross is there, Lynn is there. The 2 main sponsors. So last year, the 2 main sponsors were the Brownstone Institute and then the Goldback guys, Alpine Gold. So basically, this is like a crypto takeover. And
we're one of the main sponsors by way of our tent. I mean, that's super awesome.
We were the first. Yeah. We were the first and the biggest kind of diamond sponsor. And the original idea behind this, so many people were introduced to cryptocurrency at PorcFest in like 2012, 2013. Like Roger was there. I found a video clip that I played where he was selling physical Bitcoin for like, he was even talking about how there's different pricing based on some of the, like between $7 and $11 each. But he onboarded so many people at PorcFest, and then Eric Voorhees was there, and Charlie Shrem was there. I think I met Vitalik in 2014. But the thing about PorcFest that's different than all of these other events, except for Monerotopia, by the way, is that people use alternative currencies the entire event. So it's like a week-long event. There's this thing called Agora Valley, and last year I think Doug pushed it big time. I think last year Privacy Coins and Monero Monero was probably the #1 crypto last year, and so we've already got a good foothold in this. So I think this is going to be just like that. So just like I would argue that the libertarian crypto revolution started in 2012 at PorcFest, I think the privacy revolution starts at this event. I think we're going to be looking back at this 5 years ago and saying, "Oh man, do you remember that? We had all these people there, and people just started using this, and now, 5 years later."
This could be where Ross really starts to embrace Monero more, right? Like, who knows what's happening behind the scenes, but you know, he hasn't exactly been sitting on his phone on X for the last, you know, 8 years, right? So he's catching up. Like you were saying, he's got to get up to speed. So this could be where he really does get up to speed a little bit, right? He was at the Bitcoin conference. I don't think he really learned much new there, other than the fact that stablecoins have taken over. But now at PorcFest, he's gonna be bumping into me and Aaron. Hopefully, we'll get him to come, maybe even talk in our tent. He's going to be giving a talk on the main stage for PorcFest. I'll be giving a talk there as well. Aaron as well. Actually, let me thank the sponsors too, right? Like we said, like we are the biggest. It's because of the sponsors, right? So Cake Wallet, tremendous thank you. Zeno, Confidential Layer, and then we also just put our own to shill our own, since Aaron and I are running this, XMR Bazaar, and Karma. So big tremendous thank you to Cake Wallet and Zano. That's what I was talking about earlier. Like they're contributing too, right? Like they're helping making events like this possible. They help Monerotopia in a big way. Cake, obviously, you know, Monerotopia wouldn't be possible without Cake to date. So tremendous thank you to the sponsors. And yeah, this isn't like a full-blown Monerotopia conference. This is a tent that we have at PorcFest. But the PorcFest conference itself is already like, there's so much going on there. Like Aaron's saying, like it's already got pre-built into it, a crypto conference, because everybody there is using crypto. This is, you know, what we try to emulate at Monerotopia. I think we've done a very good job doing it. But PorcFest is the original. You know, people, you know, accepting all types of cryptos, but pretty much anybody there that accepts crypto also accepts Goldbacks and Monero. Like almost everybody there is like I don't think anybody at this point would be unwilling if they're not already accepting Monero. I don't think anybody would say no to it. Like it's already bled into kind of the, you know, all of PorcFest at this point. So I think we should mention too, just like what it's like for anybody who hasn't gone, that's considering going. I mean, it's a week-long, PorcFest is a week-long festival. It's a bunch of people camping out, a bunch of families hanging out. Everybody's there selling whatever it is they want to sell for crypto and Goldbacks, and just living off of each other peer-to-peer. It's like what I imagine XMR Bazaar is, but in the real world, right? Like just hanging out. It's like it's an open bazaar for a week among liberty-loving people. It's beautiful in its own right. And then in terms of what we're providing, we're going to have this main tent, and like our activities probably aren't going to really kick off until, let's say, Wednesday. And then really, they're not going to really start to like really peak until Friday and Saturday, right? So that's when we'll have most of the talks and most of the action. But if you want to come to PorcFest, you come all week, you bring your family. And yeah, the Monerotopia tent will really start to peak on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And PorcFest in general, that's when it peaks. So, I mean, if you can come and you only have a certain amount of time you can devote towards it, I would say try to come, obviously, the weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or just Friday, Saturday. And that's when you'll see the most action.
Yep, I agree with that. And I mean, it's fun the entire week, and there are talks everywhere. I mean, there are all these different hubs. I mean, you don't even know how many total speakers there are on a whole variety of topics. Yeah. And then, you know, our tent is right near this campfire, which is in the main, there's a main pavilion where the main talks go. And then our tent is near that. And then there's a big bonfire every night. So people just hang out and have, you know, conversations until 3 o'clock in the morning on everything. And all of this is, it's PorcFest is, some people don't like, why is it called PorcFest? It's the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And it's one of two of the main events of the Free State Project. And if you're not familiar with the Free State Project, the whole idea of the Free State Project is to get 20,000 people to move to New Hampshire and make New Hampshire the liberty beacon of the world. And I will say, I just saw, I think CoinDesk today put out an article, and New Hampshire is ranked the #1 state in the United States for cryptocurrency. And so you're going to meet a lot of people that live in New Hampshire. I've been part of the Free State Project since 2009. I was actually the chair of the organization for a while. And so you're going to meet, so it's an interesting combination of people that already live here and that are kind of OGs. And then you've got a family component to it. And then you've got new people that are just exploring it. There's a big explosion of people that wanted to come and check it out actually because of COVID. And so it's a really cool blend of people. And I'll tell you, it's nothing like it was the first time that I went. I mean, it's just grown, and it used to be just, single people and a lot of guys. The male female balance was a little bit. Now it's like kids everywhere, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's like walking around the internet. It's like very open to with that. Like any idea conversation you want to have, you could find that group of people at PorcFest, right?
Yes,
yeah,
we
like
can.
we'll have the privacy coin tent, but you could go hang out with any persuasion. They're there. They're talking about something.
Yep.
Very free flowing in ideas. No such thing as censorship at PorcFest, because anybody, even if they're not on the main stage of PorcFest, they could throw their own little mini event there, right? And so it's freedom to assemble, and people get together and talk about whatever they want to talk about. So it's very cool. So if you're going to come out, you come enjoy the privacy tent, but there's just so much more that you'll be doing there at PorcFest too. You'll get lost in the world.
Absolutely.
Anything else we should bring up? I think we covered a lot here. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
We didn't talk about we didn't talk much about the fast.
Yeah, I mean,
but,
long and short of it, what's your take on fasting now that you've done? I know you've done them in the past. You've done extreme ones, but now you've done this most recent one. What did you learn from it, and how will you be implementing fasting moving forward, if you even still will be?
So I fasted. I started out fasting just to lose weight and to try to improve my health. So I started out with intermittent fasting, and I ran into a guy, Dr. Eric Berg, and so began the research process. And so I started, intermittent fasting, where I'd have an 8-hour eating window and then not eat for 16 hours. And then once your body becomes fat adapted, you can fast for longer. And then I started really researching the topic more heavily and found some people that had been doing much longer fasts, and then studied the history of fasting. I mean, everything from, Jesus did a 40-day fast, and Moses did 2 40-day fasts. Pythagoras did a 40-day fast. And in fact, in order to gain entrance to ancient Greek and Egyptian mystery schools, this was kind of a ritual that you would have to go through. So there is a spiritual component to it, and there are some profound health elements.
You literally do detach in a lot of ways. I didn't go nearly as long as you. I mean, I've been doing intermittent fasting for quite some time. I really love it, kind of got addicted to it. It actually led to some health issues for me because I wasn't doing it correctly. I ended up getting gout. Not that, it was because of the way I was fasting and then refueling like a maniac and basically gorging myself with food. And at that time, tequila, I would be coming off of, I wouldn't eat the entire day. I'd go 16 hours and then, break the fast with a tequila on the rocks before eating a steak and oysters and everything I love to eat. I since don't drink anymore, actually. But I was doing fasting the wrong way, but still loving and feeling the benefits. I mean, it's kind of addictive, especially the intermittent fat, because you're high energy all day. You got those ketones going. And I did for the first time, did a longer one because of you. You inspired me when you were doing it. I was like, all right, let me start. Because the thinking was that I was going to try to talk to you. I think a couple of days into it, we'd both be in the fasted state you had proposed. So I was like, all right, I guess I got to go. And I did it for 48, 2 full days. And it was good. It was easy. It was fun. And it felt great. It really did feel great. By the second morning when I woke up, wasn't hungry at all, high energy. And I'm personally thinking of trying to incorporate that more into maybe like a once a month, do something like that. But yeah, you do, even with the 48 hours, you do start to feel the detachment, right? Because you're no longer food is no longer a thing, right? You've completely eliminated food from your life, right? And we're so used to being tethered to food and having to eat. This is a big part of our lives. So when you completely tether something that feels like it's so essential and now you've eliminated it, it's like, well, what else can you eliminate in your life? Like it starts to feel like you're opting out of the matrix, right? Like in a real way, like you become detethered from the system when you kind of fast long enough. So I can only imagine. like I said, I only did 48 hours. It must have been, like you said, yeah, spiritual. Like, I mean, I truly believe you when you say that.
Well, yeah, the first time I did a 37-day one, you just walk out of it with life-changing, experiences and worldviews. I kind of got rid of political labels, and people are like, are you this or you that? I'm like, well, no, I'm for, love versus, fear, and, decentralization versus centralization. I mean, and that's just, that kind of stuff comes to you. It's just like, all right, I've let go of all the rest of the stuff, but then you start questioning everything. You are obviously thinking about food. You're interestingly not hungry, but you're able somehow to think about food, like in a way of, why does food work like this? And so for me, who's struggled with weight on and off for forever, there's a lot of, kind of anger, because I've researched, and I will rant about public health quite a bit, but, you find out that almost everything that we're told is not only wrong with respect to nutrition advice, but then when you do a deeper dive, you find out that it's maliciously wrong. It's not just, we thought this was good and we did these studies. It's, no, this guy profits off of the fact that this is the case. And so they basically, bribe the public health officials to make this the new standard. Or, 3 meals a day, that this goes back to Henry Ford and the desire to have shifts for workers, and, breakfast being the most important meal of the day, and you should eat cereal. There's never been a scientific report that justifies this. And so, but that then thinking about the world carries over to everything. And so then you start thinking about, why does this work like this? Why does this? And then you realize that almost everything is bullshit. And
Exactly.
Exactly. You do start to unplug. This last time it was, now I'm all interested in quantum biology, and Dr. Jack Kruse's stuff, and just even kind of, modern medicine is based on Newtonian physics. It's not even up-to-date physics. It's like hundreds of years old physics. We have better science, but people are tied to, they think what is science is something that hasn't even been state-of-the-art science for hundreds of years. And so there's kind of, so now I'm walking out of this, I'm like, oh man, now I've got to be lined up with circadian rhythms. And so I'm like, I don't have them yet. They're supposed to be here today, but I've got to block out the blue light, and I wake up every morning at 4:45, and I'm walking and, getting sun, and trying to recalibrate a whole bunch of other things. So all kinds of other things. And then
do you do the red light and the
I have a red light for the winter. I struggle with winter, like in a profound way. Like it's, seasonal depression, whatever you want to call it. And I suspect it's just because my mitochondria is all screwed up, because in addition to having weight issues, I'm a computer guy who started using computers when I'm 5. So I've been exposed to all this blue light. And then if you're a computer guy, you kind of, part of the thing, at least when I was growing up, is, that's something you do at night. Like you usually, if you're a computer guy and you're like in the 80s and the 90s, you're hanging out with, with your friends at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, pizza and, whatever. And it turns out none of that is all that great for your health, and none of it is aligned with circadian rhythms. And so now I'm like, oh, okay, I probably have a whole bunch of, accumulated stuff. But in addition to that, I went through, as I mentioned at the beginning, this period of time, brain fog is lifted. You have so much energy, but you're also completely present in the moment. So I got to the point where I'm like coding and then using AI to help me code while starting 2 books at the same time. And I'm like, just like, never had the amount of productivity that I had from day 14 to day 21. But that, I mean, this is the good news.
14,
and what I would,
day 14 to 21 was when you peaked in terms of being
absolutely, absolutely peaked. Then it was downhill. So I mean, I will say this: I wouldn't advise anybody. Like, you got to ease into it. You would never jump into even a 10 or a 7-day fast. Like I fasted for 200 days plus or whatever over a 2-year period of time. So I didn't walk into this like, oh, hey, gee, I'm going to just from jump do a 40-day fast. That can be pretty dangerous, but it was bad. So after day 21 to day 30 was kind of, it wasn't bad, but like the like superhuman abilities went away and started gradually. And days 30 to 40 were really rough. The last 3 days were really bad. And so of course I'm like, all right, well, I'm doing this to raise awareness for Roger's situation. So of course I'm going to Amsterdam, and I went to Amsterdam. I was supposed to give a talk, and then somehow I ended up giving 4 talks. which by the end, I couldn't even prepare for the talks. I couldn't sit at my computer for 5 days. So not only did I have to travel to Amsterdam at the end of this fast, I then had to break the fast and hope that I was recovered well enough to actually create my presentation. So this was not a great situation. And then I actually couldn't sleep. So I pulled two all-nighters after I broke my fast. I did an episode of it. It's on the Aaron Day show. I think it's episode 13 or 14.
I did see some of that. Yeah.
Where I actually broke the fast live and then talked for 3.5 hours and then did these talks, but then I couldn't sleep for 2 days because I had a whole bunch of energy. But then I actually had some health consequences related to that, which is it took a while for my body to adjust. It was a water only fast with the exception of taking electrolytes. So
That's what I was going to ask you. So it's just water and electrolytes that you're nothing.
Electrolytes, and the big electrolytes are salt, magnesium, and potassium. But I got those ratios off, and it turns out you then start really learning that you can feel in your body when those ratios are off. And so I was like, so then after I broke the fast, I'm like, oh, I've got like mini cramps all over my body. So it took me a while I'm still not fully recovered, but I'm mostly recovered. I mean, I'm lifting weights now, and I'm I'm getting like 20,000 steps a day. I'm getting back into it. But I mean, there was seriously like a 7 or 8 days. So I would not do a 40-day fast again. I would do a 21-day fast again. And I will incorporate, but now what I'm doing is I like this idea, and we didn't talk about this, but when you're 3 days into a fast, you actually reboot your entire immune system. By day 7, you actually start creating stem cells. When you research
that's the science?
Yes.
By day 7, you start generating stem cells?
Yes.
That's
and
incredible.
then by day 10, your human growth hormone levels like 5x. So what you will find,
like a hard reset on your body, and your body starts to thrive instead of die.
Yeah. So I actually just joined this thing called Agorist Cypher. So it's me and Sal the Agorist and John Bush and others. It's like this subscription-based newsletter that comes out every month. And I write 1,000-word thing. And the thing that I wrote about was how basically fasting is a jumpstart to agorism and when you go through a 7 to 10 day fast, if you have type 2 diabetes, if you have insulin resistance, if you have high blood pressure, that stuff is going to get wiped out. Now, what you do when you come out of it, that's the whole. You should spend probably twice as long as you spent in the fast, making adjustments and being really conscious of what happens when you come out of it. There's this guy, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who you can find him on YouTube. He's been running water-only fasting clinics for, more than a decade. And, it's a medically supervised setting where, it's IV for the electrolytes, which, by the way, I would do probably IVs if I were going to ever do, which I'm not. But for the last 10 days, everything tasted bad. Like electrolytes taste bad. You get to the point where I think it's day 10 or maybe it's day 7, your taste buds also reset. So when I used to drink a lot of soda, diet soda, and I remember the first time I did a 7-day fast, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to have a Diet Coke. And I went to have it, and it tasted like I was in a chemistry lab and just started like putting beakers in my mouth. It was horrible. So you have a chance to be in touch with your body. Your body will tell you what it wants if you get your brain out of the way. And so you won't want sugar. There's no need for sugar. And so you can actually completely adjust your whole diet. But I think this is the gateway to getting off of big food and getting off of big medicine. And, and by the way, it's almost impossible to find information about this. So I found Goldhammer. There's another guy, Jason Fung. There's another guy, Vlongo. There's also a water-only clinic. But when you even search, so I got to the point where I'm like Grok or Chat GPT. I'm on day 32 of a fast. And it's telling me, oh, you shouldn't do a fast for 32 days. And it would give me this disclaimer language. And so then I'd say to him, like, okay, well, what is your evidence for this? Oh, well, I'm sorry, we don't actually have any evidence. Well, why don't you have any evidence? Well, the independent review board probably wouldn't suggest that a fast this long is even healthy for people. And it's like, people have been doing this for thousands of years. And there's absolutely no money in fasting. There's no drugs. There isn't even food, right? So this is a big like kick in the nuts.
Doesn't exactly align with capitalism, right?
It doesn't align with it at all. But I like the 40-day clinic guys. Like we've cured MS, very stage 4 cancers. Because think about it. So your body, cancer feeds on sugar. Your body is in this state kind of survival. It's pumping up stem cells. Like all inflammation in your body goes away. Your skin clears up. But like it's like this just amazing process that happens that does peak on day 21. But I actually wrote this article. I said, look, anybody, if you're interested in agorism, one of the most difficult things from unplugging from the matrix, where they have a hook on you, is what? They have a hook on you with the money. They have a hook with your perceived need to use the healthcare system. And they have a hook with big food. And so that's what makes it hard to truly exit the system. Well, I mean, fasting will help kickstart a lot of this stuff. So I recommend it. Like I said, I talked about it a lot more. I may write a book about it. I don't know, but it is a life-changing. It's a life-changing thing, and
it is one of these things they don't want to catch on for sure. I mean, like you said, just the materialism. You by nature become less materialistic, like we're saying, right? Because you just begin to treat material items like they don't matter. Like if you could look at food and not care about food, I mean, that means like why are you going to care about anything that you were told to care about, right? If food is so, you go into that thing, food is so essential, and then you're looking at, like, for me, like, there's points in it where I'm looking at food and it's like, it's not even like appetite, like, I don't even want to go through the process of eating that right now. Like, I almost like, you become completely disconnected. Lucifer is asking, can you work out while fasting? When I used to intermittent fast quite a bit, I would work out. I'd do like 16 hours of fasting or even more sometimes. I basically wouldn't eat. I go to bed. I wake up. I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I'd wake up. I wouldn't eat. I'd just drink water, coffee all day, and I would actually work out at the end of the day, like around 5 o'clock after fasting the entire day, and it was great. It was great. It would be, I was high energy in the gym, and then, like I said, and then I'd break my fast, but in in a very dramatic way. I'd be like, all right, now it's time to, eat, a pound of steak. And so yes, I say yes, you can work out. Now I don't know if you're doing extended fasts. Obviously, you can't be working out. I mean, even if you're doing a couple of days, at some point it's going to probably have a negative impact on you, I would think.
So this is wild, and this is one of the things that I researched that I couldn't get a good answer for. The only person that actually had an AI that could give me any information was Mike Adams, who's releasing his own Enoch AI based on his own data set that he's trained. But I would walk. So I would still walk 10, 15, 20,000 steps a day. So nothing, I'm not lifting weights. I have a theory that in the early phases of fasting, you actually can lift weights because your body goes through this process of autophagy where it eats up the material in your cells. And I actually think amino acids are part of what's in there, or may be part of what's in there. And so in theory, you could actually, your body goes into a protective state where it's burning fat and it protects to a certain extent the muscle and everything else. And you may even be able to recycle some amino acids. But I did walk, but I will tell you, this was weird. I walk all the time. So if it's a normal day, like today I didn't do so well. Today, 10,000 steps, but I'll usually walk 15,000, 20,000 steps. And I walk this, typical pattern. And I usually don't get zone minutes, or it's hard for me to get zone minutes. But I got to the point where, like, day 10 into this, all of a sudden, like, I'm just doing my normal walk, but at like half pace. And all of a sudden my heart rate's going up to 138. I'm like, what the hell is this? So that was really weird to have happen. So definitely no lifting, but it's actually recommended.
That probably was, you're probably dehydrated probably, no?
I was doing my best to make sure. So you want to make sure that you don't want to have too much liquid because
right, you don't want to flush out the electrolytes.
Well, but on top of that, your kidneys and liver are really the star of the show here because so think about, I mean, this is kind of a gross thing to talk about, but after a while, I mean, your body is, using ketones, but what is the waste product? Where does the waste product go? You're not actually pooping. It comes out of your breath and it comes out in the urine. So the kidneys are working overtime. I mean, and that's the one. I mean, and I could feel.
Right. That's why I got the gout. That's why I got the gout too. Right. Because that's all a kidney issue. But go ahead.
That's all a kidney issue. And so that was just fast. So, but again, you are so present in your own body that like you can feel everything. So, but by the end, I'm like, I actually don't even want to drink water. But I know if I don't drink water, I'm going to have issues. And so it's like, so the last 3 days were hell. I mean, it's just another gross story, but I get off at the airport in Amsterdam and it's like this really long terminal. So like I'm at the very end. So I felt like it was like a mile and a half. And I puked up a bunch of bile waiting for the Uber. That was the only actual bad thing. I will say when I've done fast in the past, if you don't take salt, and this is a weird thing, because of what's going on with the ketones, your mouth feels like salt. It tastes like salt. And so you're like, well, I don't need salt, but you actually do need salt. So one time when I did a long fast, like an idiot, I went to the coffee shop with my kids and I got an espresso and I was in my wife's office and I stood up and I just passed out. I just completely, I woke up on the floor. That was a lesson that I learned that I did not repeat this time around, but it really was an electrolyte balancing game for the last 3 days.
Blood
and I'm
pressure.
like, I can't wait for this to be over.
So if I wanted to, get the benefits of, stem cell regeneration, would you say like a 7, or you have to, like an 8-day fast, like a...
I think 7. I think you actually maybe even start before that. I think 7 days. 3 days will reboot the immune system. 7 days will kick in stem cells, and then that whole process peaks by day 21. So I
guess I'm basically what I'm at. So I've done like a 48-hour. That feels good. I'm thinking of doing that maybe like once a month, whatever. But if I were to try something more extreme, what would you recommend? Like, what would be the next level after 48, where you'd experience different things happen to you physiologically in a positive way?
So I think the way
48.
I think the way I'm going to incorporate this is do a 3-day fast every quarter as the seasons change, because if you're rebooting your immune system, it just occurs to me that, hey, maybe this is a good time with things. I don't have it. I didn't research that. That's just has just occurred to me. And then maybe once a year do a 7-day fast. I think, and I believe that if you do that, you probably won't get cancer, because cancer takes a while to develop. And if you're actually, your body's wiping out all of these cells and you don't have any sugar and everything, I suspect. But so much of even coming out of this last fast, and now that I'm looking at circadian stuff and the Jack Kruse stuff, which is on top of a whole bunch of other stuff I've researched, I'm like, God, how much brain power do we have to put into realizing how badly we've screwed up and built our lives around things that are completely unnatural, right? Like it's actually kind of embarrassing. It's like, oh, good, I've got to read a report now to realize that I should go out in the morning and like literally touch grass, with my feet and, and get out in the sun for 15 minutes to kickstart. Like the fact that we have to research this to like for this left brain thing to even get back to even remote touch with nature. But I'm adding kind of that level to it. And the circadian stuff, there's actually overlap with what Kruse says with intermittent fasting. But there's like a time, but what he's adding to it is the timing of meals and the timing of even exercise. You mentioned lifting weights at 5 p.m. and and his claim is, and I don't know if this is actually true or not, but if you lift weights after 5, you get like a 2x boost for protein synthesis and a 4x boost for fat burning. I'd never heard that before. I found that to be interesting. Or that the first meal that you should eat in the day. So wake up in the morning, get some sun for like 15, 30 minutes, and then your first meal should be just all protein. And so again, I'll report back. I don't know if any of this is, I find it intriguing, but it is adding another layer in this journey of, okay, I've been thinking about this wrong. So now I've got the fasting part of it right, but now let's kind of align the timing with, the earth and the circadian rhythms. And so I'm excited about it. We'll see what happens. Next time I'll have my true blue blocker glasses. I've got shoes with leather soles coming so that I can connect to the earth. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I just take the shoes off and actually touch the grass once a day. I try to do that.
Yeah.
Whether or not the grounding thing is as effective as people say, I think that's just good to be in nature. Yeah, I think we can leave it here. Actually, I did want to the one thing with the freedom dollar. So what is the easy for those that actually want to try it out, use it? I haven't tried it yet. I mean, I haven't gone through the process of like moving Zano into free. What is the process like? Is it just kind of like a click of the button in the app? How do you move in and out of from?
I mean,
Zano
if you have Zano, you can actually go to if you're using the Zano browser, they actually launched something really cool where you can actually log in. There's a browser built into the mobile app now, where you can actually log into different DeFi apps using your mobile wallet. And so when you do that, you can actually log into either the trade.zeno.org, which is the P2P marketplace where there's an AMM there where you can swap directly your Zeno for FUSD. And then they're also adding, I don't know if it's live yet, but you can also connect using your wallet to freedomdollar.com website. And there's an even easier way to immediately swap your Zeno for.
But I imagine eventually it'll be right in like the wallet itself natively, like without even using one of these swapping feet, right? Because can't you just do it kind of on chain, right?
It's using the P2P exchange, the Zeno P2P exchange. It's not like using Xlix or anything. It's actually using that. And so, yes, I would expect that it'll at some point will be integrated directly into Cake.
So it's
Bitcoin.com.
almost like doing an atomic swap, and then there's these. Okay.
I think they call them ionic swaps. I think Zeno calls them ionic swaps.
Yes.
And by the way, it's a really cool feature of Zeno. So I remember when I did this with Dan O'Neill. This is like just a test transaction, and like I was sold. So I created these tokens, a free Assange token and a free Ross token, and I was able to swap my free Ross for his free Assange just using the wallet with no third parties because they're using ionic swaps. And it's like, that may not sound like a lot, but the ability to do that kind of a transaction without a third party is kind of game changing when you think about what you can do with that. So anyway, that's how you can do it. Also, it's available on all of these exchanges now. So and I believe there's even on one of these exchanges, I think there's an FUSD XMR pair. I'm going to have to look through and see which one it is. I've got to like kind of work through this, but there are a ton of exchanges where you can swap as well. And if you're really interested, I mean, send me your Zeno address and I'll send you $1 worth of FUSG. Just anybody who's watching this within, limits like the, first 25 or so.
I mean, if it proves to be, robust technology, and actually is working as an algorithmic stablecoin, it would be amazing one day to see it added to something like Sarai Dex, right? And you could anonymously go from your Monero into your anonymous private stablecoin. That'd be beautiful.
Yeah, no, I'm really bullish on it. I do think I used to be kind of on algorithmic stablecoins. Now that I see how this thing has been put together, and in fact, I was working on a gold-backed token, but I now am thinking I might talk to these guys about instead just creating a P2P marketplace of decentralized, gold suppliers all over the world who are willing to accept this anonymous stablecoin at using the escrow feature of Zeno. So this way I don't have to worry about. So, from your perspective, if you have even though the FUSD isn't backed by gold, you can always swap it for gold if that's actually what you're interested in. But it's all now decentralized and I don't have to manage anything. There's no like third party. I'm not even working with with any vaults or anything like that. But I haven't talked to anybody about that yet. But it does occur. I am so impressed with the way that this works and that it truly is decentralized that I think I might pursue that for Karma.
And yeah, right now, obviously, XMR Bazaar is Monero only, but we are thinking of integrating something like a Trocador so people could pay effectively in any crypto, but then the seller would always receive Monero.
Yep.
But I don't know, maybe eventually we natively add something like a private algorithmic stablecoin, right? So as an option to natively receive.
Well, by the way, that's what I'm thinking of, that same thing with this plugin. So the plugin is I could introduce Trocador or Exelix and do exactly what you described, or maybe I'll just make certain coins native so that there's not even the swapping the fee. And so and this is the kind of stuff, if we work together on this, there's like this, first of all, there can't be just one privacy coin. They're building CBDCs to do 1.8 million transactions per second. So as optimistic as we may or may not be, we're not going to be able to have, like, we're not actually fighting. We're fighting people that are building that. We don't have a single chain that has the capacity. So we actually do need to work together. And we actually need, like, this is why I liked Cake so much, is the fact that Cake works with multiple privacy coins, whether it's, even Litecoin with Mimblewimble and everything else, because that's what the users want. So if we have point of sale systems like this, and when we actually are working together, focusing on the user, acknowledging that we need combined, capacity to be able to onboard a bunch of people, then we'll all be much better off. Like, this is why I hope we don't get into any kind of, we're not at the point where we should be cannibalizing each other by any stretch of the imagination. We should be fighting the technocrats.
Yeah. Although Monero could scale pretty well, we shall see. Arctic Mine has Monero going up to Visa-like transactions in tandem with Moore's law, right, and improvement in bandwidth, and he doesn't really see a limit there. With dynamic blocks, theoretically, we should, quite a few.
And Zeno as well is moving to actually even shorter block times, and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, Zeno has advantages with the proof of stake eventually too, in terms of faster transactions and not having to worry about that lock time that Monero has. There's that.
But anyway, we need all of it. We should use all of it and support each other
100%
until we get these technocrats out of the way. Which
and the community of people that actually cares about this stuff is so small. Like, the people that actually aren't just trying to turn $1 into $1 million by buying some coin, but people that are actually interested in opting out. They get excited about being able to transact outside of the state surveillance system, that just want to feel what it's, that want to experience. It's a small group of people. So if some of those people are using Pirate Chain, be welcoming to them, because this is the small group of people that are, maybe they're not using Monero, and I hope they find their way to it. But they're of the same type of person that we are. They're looking to opt out, right? They want to live off of each other with the cryptocurrency. So it's really, really silly to let them divide and conquer. So totally agree with you there. We got to continue to drive that home. Aaron, man, it's been fantastic as always.
Great to see you.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you now. I think I don't know how long it's been now. We've been getting to know each other now for a year, I guess maybe 2 years now. I've really realizing how much of a talent you are, especially your ability to kind of really get at the root cause, or kind of the behind the scenes of what's going on politically as well. I don't know how you do it, but you have really good research skills. Everything with the with the stable coins and the CBDCs. You're kind of seem to be one of these guys that's first out there noticing what they're really up to. So kudos to you, man. A lot of respect to you for that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed working with you, and appreciate everything that you've put together here. And actually, you have been the dominant force putting privacy Monero on the map and pushing the adoption. And I'm excited about. I think this conference is going to be great. Like I said, I think we're going to look back at this 5 years from now and say, "Wow, I'm really glad we collaborated on this," because I think it's going to be a game changer.
Awesome, brother. I'll obviously we'll be in touch with regards to the conference, and look forward to seeing you in person.
All right, same. Talk to you soon.
Adios.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet, a trustless, open source wallet that gives you the keys to your crypto. Invoice, donate, and trade your Monero with peace of mind, piece of cake. And by StealthyX, an instant exchange where privacy is a top concern. Go to stealthyx.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register and with no limits, making StealthyX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Hi, Moneroland. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode. We release new episodes every week. You can find and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Odyssey, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Go to MoneroTalk.live for a full list of places where you can watch and listen. If you want to interact with us, guests, or other podcast listeners, you can follow us on Twitter, Mastodon, or any of our social media platforms. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you, and supporting us is easier than ever by typing in MoneroTalk.crypto in your Monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip. Once again, thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to being back next week.